You know, guys, right now we are currently in a hiatus with the CW's DCEU Arrowverse or DC Arrowverse. The reason we're in a hiatus is due to the fact that, of course, it's Christmas season and a lot of shows go into a hiatus period to kind of let the Christmas and holiday season kind of do its thing, where it can allow specials and movies to air without interruption or worrying of having to be moved into different time slots because of such things. But anyway, currently though, as we speak, yes, the Arrowverse is in hiatus, but it's also in a cliffhanging hiatus due to the fact that right now we are just 2 episodes away from completing Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, Crisis on Infinite Earths, to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people watching, is the DC's attempt at doing their own version of Marvel's Avengers Endgame slash Infinity War, or Avengers Infinity War slash Endgame. And for for those people to say that and think that like I do, I don't think they could be far off. Because when you think about it, this is pretty much very similar in tone. Not similar in big budget and all that like what the Avengers got or anything, but basically similar in tone as the stakes, the stakes that are uh, on the line, the high stakes that are on the line, the existence of reality as we know it, the lives of those that the characters care about, basically on the line of either being, restored or lost forever, things like that. It's basically a huge event. It's a high stakes situation. And of course, I'm doing this unscripted and uncut and on the fly. But like I say, it's a high stakes kind of situation because basically, just like with Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, life as the Arrowverse characters know it, like Supergirl, Arrow, Flash, Black Lightning, The Legends of Tomorrow, you name it. Even those that are on DC shows or have DC shows that are aired, elsewhere, like Lucifer is on Netflix and Constantine, I think, is somewhat on Netflix or Hulu, something like that. So you have these. Basically, this event is so huge that it's affecting even those worlds. I mean, heck, you even have it affecting the Smallville world of the DC universe or multiverse. You have it affecting the 1990s Flash universe. You know, you have it affecting a somewhat of a Batman universe where Kevin Conroy plays Bruce Wayne. So this is a major deal. But the question anybody asks is this DC's attempt on a smaller scale, with not that big of a budget? It's a decent budget, but not a big one. Is this DC's answer, like I say, on a smaller scale, to Marvel's Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame movies? One has to think that because, like I said, the circumstances are similar. They're almost identifiable in some ways. Thanos, he wanted to bring perfect balance, mainly to save his world. Here on Crisis on Infinite Earth, you have the monitors wiping out all alternate realities, all alternate Earth because they get an enjoyment out of it or because they want to bring balance themselves or something like that. I don't know. I haven't really read the story that much, but I've only heard what people have said. But when you think about it, is this their answer? Because ironically, when you look at how when you look at the timing for the debut of this crossover, it's in the same year as Endgame's debut on the big screen. When you look at how it was finalized and put into production and all that and filmed, it was all done during the run of Infinity War. So one cannot look at all that and think, is this their attempt to do their own Infinity War / Endgame? And one would have to say possibly yes. I mean, think about it. They wanted to do something big on the big screen, but they rushed too much into it when they did Man of Steel, Superman versus Batman, Dawn of Justice, Wonder Woman, Justice League. They rushed too much into it. They rushed too fast into it that it ruined any chance they had of getting to what they want, getting to that, or achieving that goal, I should say, that they wanted to achieve. So, like I said, one has to think and wonder if maybe this is their way of, making up for that by taking one of the more popular live action adaptations of the DC characters in the Arrowverse, as it's known on the CW, and putting Crisis on Infinite Earths as sort of a way to make up for the fact that they didn't get a chance to achieve that goal that they wanted to achieve originally with the DCEU on the big screen. Because again, you got to look at the timing of the debut of Crisis of Infinite Earths. It's debuting within the same year Endgame debuted on the big screen, and Endgame, ironically, almost within the same time frame, just made its debut officially, I believe, on Disney Plus. So, again, one has to think: is that the reason? I mean, I know it sounds like I'm rambling a lot, and I just got off work a little while ago. Oh, so I do apologize. But one has to wonder, one has to think if perhaps there's a coincidence here. Because again, both have a similar kind of story. Reality is at stake. Reality as they know it is at stake. Those they care for, their existence, their futures are at stake. And, who knows what the end result will be. I mean, people pretty much look at Arrow, bit of spoilers here, Arrow dying, I think in the first or second part of Crisis on Infinite Earths, people will look at that and say that's very similar and comparable to Tony Stark dying. Maybe not in the same vein, but very similar. Two very mainstay hearts of the franchise universes that they're part of, losing their lives or sacrificing themselves. People would make similar parables and comparisons, I should say, to that. So it makes you think. It makes you really think in the end whether or not DC, along with the CW, planned to make Crisis on Infinite Earths for several reasons. One, to make up for the fact that they didn't get a chance to achieve this kind of story arc on the big screen, because you can't tell me or anybody else that there was probably a plan to take Crisis on Infinite Earths and adapt it for the big screen out of the DCEU. You can't tell me that wasn't on the table, because it was. And now what they've done is decided to probably bring it to the small screen to make up for that. Now, some may say that's not true and that they've had this plan for a while, and perhaps they did. But what I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen, is it just kind of makes... What I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to say is, to me, it makes a little bit of sense. Maybe that could be the reason. But again, that's my opinion. The second reason they're doing this is, again, to kind of give us our own version of, give us an Infinity War slash Endgame like story to kind of stand side by side or even compete with Avengers, even though it's on a smaller scale, smaller budget and all that. It's still pretty much trying to compete with them. And again, when you look at the timeline of its release within the same year as Endgame, it's, to me, it's too much of a coincidence. I mean, when production started on it last year, and somewhat part of this year, what part of the MCU were we in? What portion of the MCU were we in? We were in the Infinity War slash Endgame portion. We were building towards Endgame when they were finalizing the script and putting this crossover for Crisis into production when they did. So again, it's just my opinion, but I think one of the reasons, in my opinion, is to make up for the fact that they couldn't achieve this kind of a story the way they wanted to for the big screen with the original plans for the DCEU, because they had more movies planned for that. And second of all, I think it's their way of giving us an event of competing with MCU's Avengers Infinity War slash Endgame, but on a smaller budget and on the smaller screens, by showing people, hey, look, we could put on just as good, if not maybe better, a better Endgame-like scenario, Infinity War slash Endgame-like scenario story arc than Marvel can. And oh, by the way, we're doing it for free on the small screens, even though we are using a smaller budget. Again, just my opinion, and I know that didn't make much sense, and I do apologize. Again, like I said, I'm tired, and I know it sounds like I'm rambling. But the point I'm getting at, guys, is when you think about it, even though we got 2 shows to go to finish it off, one has to question, as I said at the beginning, is Crisis on Infinite Earths the DC Arrowverse, or the DC Arrowverse slash CW's attempt to compete and maybe even cash in, but mostly compete with Marvel's Avengers Endgame slash Infinity War story arc that we just recently wrapped up? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Because again, there's so many there's so many similarities between the 2 story arcs that it only makes sense, and that people would see something like that. Like I said, Arrow dying, sacrificing himself, very similar to Iron Man and his sacrifice at the end of Endgame. You take a look at existence, all of existence and reality being at stake. The fact that you're bringing in characters, sometimes just exclusively for the story. Now, some people might say that that's the one thing DC has. It's the one thing that DC actually has a head start on, or at least an advantage of, compared to Marvel and their MCU deal. That when they're doing their Infinity War slash Endgame with Crisis, they're able, even if it's through cameos, small role cameos, whatever, speaking roles, whatever, they're able to bring in all of the past incarnations of the DC characters, like the 90s Flash, Tom Welling as Clark Kent from Smallville, Lucifer currently on the Lucifer series on Netflix, stuff like that. Even, what was it, Hawk and Robin made a cameo in there. So you could probably say Titans is going to probably make a cameo, maybe not. Stuff like that. So, it makes you think and it makes you wonder, but people will say that that's an advantage that DC has with the Arrowverse, Crisis, with the Arrowverses Crisis on Infinite Earth story arc, their Avengers, Endgame, and Infinity War, is that they're able to bring in characters without any hesitation of licensing or whatever, or rights or whatever. So people might say that, but again, getting back to my point, you know, you have to, but getting back to my point, you have to ask yourself, is this the DC Arrowverse's attempt to compete, even if it's on a smaller scale, David versus Goliath like scenario, with Avengers Endgame and Infinity War by putting them on their own on the small screen through the CW with Crisis on Infinite Earths? It makes you think. It makes you wonder. Wonder if that's the case. If maybe they did this, they planned this all out, knowing that they probably wouldn't get a chance to actually do this on the big screen like they probably originally intended to or wanted to, and that now the smaller screen, the Arrowverse, is probably the best option to go with. But, that's just my thought. That's just a thought. But what do you guys think? What do you think? Do you think Crisis on Infinite Earth is the Arrowverse's version the Arrowverse slash DC Comics way of cashing in on the Marvel's Avengers Infinity War slash Endgame by creating their own with a Crisis on Infinite Earth? What do you guys think? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you on this. And I will talk to you all later. But let me know what you guys think. And I do apologize if I rambled a little bit. Like I said, I'm tired. I just got off work. I ended up doing carts most of the day, even for 4.5 hours, that is. But let me know what you guys think. Comment below, and I would love to hear what each and every one of your thoughts are on this, I should say. And I am out. I'm going to rest up a little bit, drink some coffee. But let me know what you guys think. Peace.